Hello and welcome to the Cardiac Cats YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Shorba, and today I'm going to be breaking down the first and second day of the Senior Bowl down in Mobile, Alabama. So, decided I wanted to do this a little early because there's a lot to talk about, and I feel like putting everything into one video is too much. So, I'll leave day 3 stuff for tomorrow, and we'll kind of wrap together what's happened the first couple days for that reason. But like I said, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot we learned about players, a lot of players standing out, maybe some new names that Jacksonville looks at. And you even got to look at players that apparently Jacksonville is very interested in. So it was a really exciting experience these first few days. Still got a ways to go to wrap this up. I did actually, funny enough, get to meet the Jaguars assistant GM this morning, Ethan Waugh. I also saw Trent Baalke walking around, and then I think he was actually apparently with Doug Marrone. Well, I saw him too. I got a picture of that, and then there was like a couple other guys I think from Jacksonville, but they've got a presence out here. They're definitely watching now, and so I've been trying to monitor like where they've been, kind of what they've seen, all that. The focus very much has been on offensive line and a little bit on wide receiver. I believe Baalke this morning went over to watch some defensive line drills as well, but it looks very much like this team will probably focus on the offensive side of the ball realistically. And we know there's going to be work in the trenches. You know, there's some rumors about Cam Robinson being gone from the team this next year. It very much seems like a possibility, whether or not you agree with that. And so if they move on from him, and then you're looking at, needing a new center, and then having a right guard that's way overpaid and a left guard that's not under contract, there's going to be a lot of investment probably taking place on the offensive line. So it makes sense why they've been watching that so closely. So a lot of exciting stuff going on. It's been fun to see specifically what's been happening and to be there for it. Also hearing some rumors and just inside stuff around the NFL, things when they break, all that. So it's been enjoyable. But I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to jump into some notes on some of these players, things that I've noticed. I've got some videos as well. If you guys want to see stuff live from the Senior Bowl or pretty quick after it happens, I'm trying to upload videos as fast as I can each day. So we've had a lot of stuff going out, so you guys can check that out and learn a little bit. Not that they're all super important, but I try to get everything I can and put it out there. So let's go ahead. Let's hop into this. So first person I want to talk about, Jackson Powers Johnson. Out of everyone at the Senior Bowl, this might be the player who has done the most for their stock. I think very clearly, and this was kind of talked about as a possibility before, I think Jackson Powers Johnson Jr., or I don't know why I said junior, Jackson Powers Johnson is a first rounder in this class. There's no debate on that now. He's got to go off the board before 32. Way too good of a player. He's played a year and a half worth of reps at Oregon, something that I think a lot of people caught on to that I mentioned before and maybe hasn't been talked about as much because we have a huge need at center, is this is the guy who can play guard as well. So keep that in mind because say Jacksonville goes out and finds a center that's really good in free agency, doesn't take Jackson Powers Johnson off your list of players. As long as you have a need on the interior, he is an option, and he's a very high-end option everywhere. The way he's performed has been incredible. I think he came in quite a bit heavier than expected, but he's moving quick. He's fast. He knows how to counter most of everything. I have a very hard time finding problems with this game, and even the problems that I do find very rarely are very much coachable issues. So I'm really excited about him coming to the NFL. I think he's going to be phenomenal, and he could very well be in that conversation for 17 for Jacksonville. Whether or not you like that, I think he should be in that conversation at the bare minimum. So I'll show you one of the plays from practice. I might try to get my audio down here a little bit. It's not too bad. Hopefully that turns it down. You see this play, loses his footing a little bit, but you see the makeup there. I mean, he gets the guy in a chokehold off of that. And that was probably the worst rep he had on Tuesday. He's had a lot better reps out here too. So this is a an example of how good it's been. Essentially, he's had multiple takedowns. He's just played phenomenal on the offensive line, and he's moved around. Like I said, they've had him at guard a little bit. It's been exciting to watch him. So one of the next guys I want to talk about, kind of the opposite here, is Jordan Morgan. Now Morgan was a favorite for some people. He's a guy coming off an injury, I believe in 2022 he tore his ACL. Just saying off the top of my head, so I might be a little off on that. But he's had injury concerns coming in. But people like his size, people like his build, they feel like he's a really good player. And I see why people like him, but I have some major concerns with him and why I probably wouldn't even consider him until our second round pick. He has had problems throughout the Senior Bowl with being able to counter or just keep up with defenders. It's like he'll have his first reaction planned out well. And then the moment that a defender tries to go around the edge or do something else, it's almost like he freezes. He just doesn't react fast enough. And so he's not going to get like bulldozed necessarily, but he's not going to be able to hold up for long in protection. So here's an example. I'll make this full screen for you guys so you can actually see it. He's out at left tackle. See, he doesn't get around him at first, goes around the edge then. So you can see Morgan doesn't really plan for that. Just kind of got himself engaged, almost getting into a hold here. And then he lets him around the edge. The guy would have a clear shot at the quarterback at that point. So not ideal. That's a major issue for me and something I haven't seen change. So I think there's a little bit of projection for him being a really good left tackle or right tackle in the NFL because of that. Now, there's going to be some guys to talk about here too I don't have video up on. I've got a lot of them recorded, but don't really have anything I think would apply too well or really show that much. So one of those guys is Brendan Rice. He had a really impressive first day at the Senior Bowl, but I feel like day two was a little different. I think he's a guy who is extremely physical, way more physical than I expected to see. You could literally hear it when he's on the field. He's just constantly grunting and shoving into people. He had a play. Actually, I should have pulled this up, although it'd be hard to find now, where he basically ended up accidentally punching Quinyon Mitchell in the helmet because he's hand fighting. He's doing everything he can. Problem for Brendan Rice that I see is separation. He can get physical. He can try to create it that way, but it's still very limited. And I don't think he's a great catcher. And what I mean by that is I don't think he's going to be able to do contested catches that well unless it's really good ball placement. So he looks great the first part of the route, but if cornerbacks are going to keep up with him, I don't see him having as much success as you'd like in the NFL. I think he's a guy that I'm probably going to be looking at, maybe top of the third round. I don't think he gets into early day two for me personally, but he'll definitely be someone I continue to watch because maybe this is just something I noticed one day and it wasn't really what he is, and he ends up playing better. So that's very much possible. Now, next guy, talking about receivers still here. Ricky Pearsall out of Florida. This guy's looked fantastic. I don't know if I've got him on my big board right now. I have looked at him a little bit before. I know throughout the season, the little bit I watched, he was a very productive receiver for the Gators. I think he's going to be the kind of guy who goes, maybe late day two, early day three that ends up being a starter in the NFL. And I'm not saying a high-level starter, but I think he's a reliable, solid starter for an NFL team. He has got great movement skills. I felt like he was really good at being able to change direction. And I didn't see any problems with him catching the ball. I felt like he did a really good job. Just overall, very consistently good player. Maybe not an elite one. Obviously, I don't think he's elite, but I think he's going to be someone that teams are going to love having. And it's going to be a good use of a pick late day two, early day three. So I very much liked what I saw out of him. Now, another Florida Gator here that I've been watching is Kingsley. I'll probably say this wrong. Kingsley Kingsley. Sorry for butchering that. He has impressed me a lot. It is not perfect, but he's done a lot to really raise his stock because before, like, I didn't have him scouted. I still don't to the full extent. He was really low on PFF's board. That's the only place I've seen him as far as when I'm like doing a mock draft or I'm just trying to look at what players are available. So he's not got really high stock, but he has played with really good strength. There was a play, this is the one I'll show you next, where he basically just put a guy straight into the ground. So I'll show you that really quick. He's at center here. Guy gets low, drops on him. It's not necessarily how every snap's going to go, right? But it seems like this is the guy who's smart and who knows how to take advantage of a defender when they make a mistake. I think he's got ample strength. I think for him, it's going to be the counters. I did see a play today, or maybe it was yesterday, one of these 2 days, where he got beat really easily by Michael Hall, which Michael Hall is really fast. He's had explosiveness off the defensive line. Not a guy I was going to mention here, but Michael Hall, very much someone I'm going to have to look at more and probably rise up my board because he's played phenomenal throughout the Senior Bowl. So, it sucks that he ended up giving up a sack to Michael, but at the same time, that's a really good player. And I think that Kingsley has a lot of upside and could be a sneaky center prospect later on in the draft. Whether or not he's a starter, he's a guy I would invest a pick in, day 3. And then the next guy we'll talk about, Luke McCaffrey. So Luke was getting flamed on my Twitter all day yesterday because I put out a route from him where it was, I don't know if they were told like go 80% or it was like a run play or what it was, but he just looked slow on the play. And so that was something I had my eyes on because of that. And of course, everyone's like, this guy needs to work at Walmart. He's washed. He's terrible. And so he was a guy I tried to watch today. And I still see it really showing up for him. I think he's got decent enough speed, but the change of direction really isn't there. He just doesn't seem super athletic to me. And so I'm not really sold that he's going to be this productive receiver in the NFL. I don't know if he's going to be able to carve out a good role for himself. I'll show you what I mean here. Just watch how he rounds off this route. He tries to have a little bit of suddenness, but it's just not really there to the extent that I want. I think you can get a lot of receivers who have a leg over him in that aspect and can do everything else too for the most part. So with such a good wide receiver class, I think McCaffrey's going to stay pretty low on my board, honestly. Now, getting back to the offensive line, Fuaga, okay, that's Mitchell, so we'll go to that in a second. So Fuaga is someone I'm watching. Talise Fuaga, out of Oregon State. The question with Fuaga has been 100% about his ability to protect the edge. That has been the main thing I've been watching because if you try to run through Fuaga, you can't run through him. It doesn't happen. You're not going to go bulldoze the guy. You're not going to be able to find any success, quite frankly, at that. And so this is a guy, I like what Jordan DeLugo said about it today. I very much agree with what he said. If you're looking at him like a tackle, he is a great, honestly, excellent run blocker, but mostly an average pass blocker. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that he's going to struggle to protect the edge. Now, if you move him to guard, the ceiling rises significantly at both of those aspects, and the floor rises just as much, if not more. So I think looking at Fuaga and seeing the problems that he has at tackle, almost all those problems are eliminated with the move to guard. So I see him now as a guard for sure. I'm going to go ahead and put him there. I'm not saying he can't play tackle at all, but that is ideally where I want him on my football team if I draft him. So Fuaga very much still impressing me. A lot of physicality. That was the one player who stood out to me the most, I think, as far as physicality during this week. So Fuaga, very much a player I'm looking at, 17. Definitely in the conversation for that pick and be a hell of a guard for the Jaguars. Now, next guy, Devonta Walker. I was liking some of the stuff I saw day one. There were also a lot of underwhelming moments. And today it just really was not going well for him. I think when I watch him, I can see why people like him. He's got great size. Like he's 6'3", I believe, nearly 200 pounds. I just don't feel like he plays with nearly enough physicality. His hands have been questionable this week. I could see him growing out of some of those things and improving, but I don't think he's there right now. And I think he can get there, but you have to factor that into your evaluation because you can't go spend a first round pick on that. And that's really where the whole conversation has been, because this is a guy that we've seen as a day 2 pick for a while. And the question has been, was this someone who, if they played the whole year, would have put himself in round 1, would have had 1,000 plus yards, been super productive, had tons of film to show how good they would have been, playing with Drake May as well. Is that what he would have been? And I think he would have been close, but I don't think he's there. I look at a player like Troy Franklin, for example, where Franklin has that same height. He's even a little bit less size, but I think he plays a little more physical than what Devonta Walker is. But then you have the route running already there, and you have relatively good hands. Some drop issues, but not as much as Devonta Walker or the same. So if I'm looking at like that, and then Troy Franklin is barely a first-round pick for me right now, as much as I like him, I don't have Devonta as a first-round pick because of that. So I want to see him get more physical. I want to see him dominate a bit more. I just don't feel like he's taking advantage of this like he could have. And that's something that we're going to have to watch on Thursday, and we're going to have to watch during the game on Saturday. So kind of unfortunate. I'm rooting for him. I want him to succeed. I hope it happens tomorrow and on Saturday. So we'll see what happens there. Now, we'll talk about defense for a second. I got a couple more guys from the national team practices. So, hence this video finally comes out. Quinyon Mitchell is a name I've been watching a lot because he's arguably been the best defensive prospect out here, depending on how you see maybe a guy like Leatu Latu, who I think without injuries could very well be ranked higher than him. But with the problem and with the question of is he going to be coming into the NFL with too big of medical red flags? You just don't really know where he's going to sit. And especially as a scout who doesn't have access to that, you can't determine where he should be because that's extremely valuable. This guy could go from early first all the way to late day 2, early day 3, just because of it. Although I don't think he should ever go that late, but that's probably about how it works. So, Quinyon Mitchell, point is, one of the best players, and he has dominated the Senior Bowl so far. He was not happy with himself yesterday. Still felt like he did phenomenal. People were talking about him. He is one of the big names that succeeded out there. Had an interception day 2. He has been physical in the way he's played. He's had some really good snaps. This is an example of one where he had an incredible pass breakup on Brendan Rice. You actually get to see a little bit of film of him. And this is kind of where the strong hands thing comes into a little bit, because I don't think Brendan Rice has really dominated the catch point like I wanted him to. But Quinyon Mitchell, he's done phenomenal. And really it's a question of, can he translate from playing so much, I think it's off-press coverage, to being more of a press corner, getting in the man more, all the other things that you're going to be asked to do by a defensive coordinator. But here's the play for you guys. So he's off screen right now. You'll see him jump in real fast here at the catch point. Just out of nowhere. He has great closing speed. He has everything, quite frankly, you're going to ask for from a cornerback as far as physical traits. And it's just a question of, can you coach him up to resolve the final things he needs to work on? And I think you can. This dude has had, I think, over the last 2 years, a 95 PFF grade over that time, which, by the way, doesn't happen a whole lot, if ever. So he's the kind of guy you invest a first-round pick in. And for me now, a couple weeks ago, I probably would have said, no, I don't want Mitchell at 17. Now, I'd be happy with that pick. Because the way I look at it, there's probably going to be a guy that I have above everyone else at 17. But with the draft and with teams seeing it so differently than the fans do and just any scout does usually, I look at it like I'm considering a whole bunch of players that if they go at this point, that's fine. I kind of lower my expectations because if I wanted to get one specific guy at every pick, I'm going to call every pick a bust because they're almost never going to pick my guy. So just kind of how I look at it. And then the final one, Roman Wilson, had a great end of the day today. I'm sure he's got to be happy with himself. He has looked like he can do it all. He's been asked to do a lot out there. He's challenged himself. And today, at the end of practice, he ended up being Quinyon Mitchell on a route. Showed off a fantastic catch. I think this is a guy that's going to be a really good slot receiver in the NFL. He's going to be one of many good slot receivers from this draft because I think Glad McConkey will also be a good one, which we'll note on him here towards the end of this video. But we'll show you this rep by Roman Wilson. Not the greatest view. As you can see, you see the two helmets there. It's kind of hidden, but this is where my seats are. And this was the best I could get. You'll see on the break here, Quinyon ends up tripping, trying to keep up with him. And look at this catch. One-handed. And like I said, bad angle. Hard to see it, but there's other views of this too if you want to look at them up. They're all over the place. But Quinyon got beat here. Roman Wilson just did a hell of a job, even on a bad throw. So he's a name I'm very much looking at if I'm looking for a slot receiver. Unfortunately for Jacksonville, or maybe fortunately, depending on how you look at it, you're not really considering him because you don't need a slot. And even if you say you do want a backup, you've already got Parker Washington. So the value there isn't really going to be good enough until way after he's drafted. So we'll go to the next guy. Go to Tyler Giden. So Giden, a name we're definitely watching, right? Because we heard last weekend, at the Trent Baalke press conference, he's listening to people, right? And so I got everyone thinking, okay, does he have a burner out there? Is he following everyone? Well, Jacksonville's fan base found his burner. And you know what he did a couple years ago? He predicted every single pick that the Jaguars made 2 months ahead of time. And you know what that account said this year about players they're watching? They want to watch Tyler Giden and Muhammad Kamara. So I'm watching those two players because I think it's really important what happens with them because these very well could be players going to Jacksonville. So Giden is a guy I have my eyes on. And you can see on this play for Giden, he did a phenomenal job on the pole. Shows a lot of strength, shows great movement skills. I'll just play it for you guys here. He's on the right at right tackle. Also note he played left tackle a little bit. Ends up throwing the guy down. But Giden, he's been phenomenal during the Senior Bowl. Now there's been some coaching stuff going on. I've seen the Colts coach kind of try to explain like hand placement to him a little better. There's technical things that are a big question. But Giden is 6'7", 328 pounds. He's huge. He moves fast. He has ample strength. He has all these things. He is a little bit older of a prospect. But the question is, can you coach him up and resolve those issues to where you're getting a great player? And I think you absolutely can. So Giden is definitely someone we're going to keep watching. But he's done a phenomenal job so far throughout the Senior Bowl, and we'll see how he performs on Saturday during the game, especially if they put him out at left tackle. So I got a couple more names for you guys. So next one, Xavier Leggett, and I guess you see the play there already. But Leggett really struggled on Tuesday. It was a bad first day. People were ripping him apart. It was a bad couple days, honestly, because Leggett, day one, when he went to the Senior Bowl, measures in from 6'3" to 6'1". So he goes down 2 inches. Funny enough, Rashee Rice did that last year, and you see how good of a player he is. And to me, it's like, I'd prefer he was 6'3", obviously, but I'm not going to tank him necessarily because it's more of an issue if you go from like above the threshold to play outside to below the threshold to play outside. So like if you went from 6 foot to 5'10", I'd probably care. But I'm not going to care if it's 6'3" to 6'1" nearly as much. So he came in, people were flaming him automatically because of that. And then day one, it did not go well for him at practice. he was getting overthrown or he was underthrown. When it was on target, it was hard to catch. He couldn't bring in difficult catches, which you still need to do. And so he just looked bad the first day, just the way it turned out. And a lot of people were turned off by it. And for me, I felt like he's probably going to rebound day 2. Now, I don't think he necessarily stole the show on day 2, but I thought he did fine. And you see a really good play here. Unfortunately, this one I couldn't record myself because I was posting during that. You see a really phenomenal catch by him and a really good release as well there. Good separation, bad throw, comes up and gets it. A really phenomenal job here by him. Catching it, not even on the ground at that point. So I still like him a lot. I think he's pretty clearly not a first rounder, but he's a priority second rounder to me. He's a guy I'd be fine trading up for. Now, we'll see who else is there. Might be a better player, probably will be. The way the draft works, I'm sure we'll have a prospect that we rank super high that's still on the board at 33. But Leggett is 100% someone I'm putting my eyes on for the rest of the Senior Bowl, and I'm putting my eyes on during the draft because I think he'd be a really good player to bring in, especially because he brings that physicality that Jacksonville is missing at the wide receiver position. Now, got 3 more names for you. All receivers. First one is a tight end, though, and that is Ben Sinot. Now, it took me until today to figure out that Ben Sinot was not wearing his college number 34. He's been 81 out there, so I haven't seen as much of him because I couldn't figure out who the heck he was on the field. But everything I've seen of him, I feel like from day one of watching him, I compared him to Brendan Strange a bit. Not necessarily because of the builds of the players, but because of the usage, kind of all over the place, even moved at fullback, really doing a whole lot for their offense. I feel like if you want to compare him, I don't think he's as athletic, but I think he's much more physical than what Strange is for the Jaguars. This is a guy that I like what was said about him this week, that after the catch turns into George Kittle. It's before the catch that's the issue, right? Because if there were no problems before the catch, well, this guy is going to be a first-round pick because he's George Kittle. But he's not. It's just after the catch he plays like that because he's super physical, hard to bring down. He tries to run through people. And it's something I love about the way he plays. And I also think this is a guy that, well, I don't see this as his primary position. I think you could play him at fullback a little bit. So if you want to get crazy with your offense, you want to give the defense more looks, then this is a guy you bring in to be able to do that. And I think he would be a really good pick, maybe on the 4th or 5th round of the NFL draft. I think he'd be good value for a team. And while Jacksonville has a lot of tight ends now, this would be the kind of player I would still consider that I feel like could round out the room really well. Just wouldn't be a priority necessarily. Now, last couple guys here. Ladd McConkey is the final one. Not the final one. He's the second to final one. McConkey, I didn't watch super close because he's a slot, and that's not really a need for Jacksonville. But you constantly hear about him at the Senior Bowl because this guy is the separation king. Everything that he does on his routes is phenomenal. He's not this uber athletic player, right? But he knows how to create separation. He knows the nuances. And when he comes into the NFL, he is going to be productive from day one. I have a very hard time not seeing that. I think he's going to be great right off the bat. And a lot of people are comping him right now to Cooper Kupp from the Rams, which I think very much could make some sense because Kupp didn't really wow you athletically, but he just knows how to get open. He runs routes well, and he's a slot receiver. But McConkey, this is just going to be a great pick for whatever team goes after him. You can see on this route, let's look at the amount of stuff he's doing there. I mean, he's finding every way to get open. He kills the defensive back on that play. The guy doesn't even know where he's going. So he is a great player. I think he's going to be possibly even a first rounder just based off of how well that he's done this week and how good he is at creating separation, because this is the kind of player that is a quarterback's best friend. Now, his teammate be another name to note, which is Marcus. Man, what is it? I gotta figure this out. Marcus Rosemy-Saintjeane. I probably butchered that too, but he's been someone who stood out to me. He's kind of in that range of Ricky Pearsall, probably a little later, but still kind of similar to me when I'm looking at these receivers. He has played pretty physical. He's run good routes. He's been reliant at the catch point. He's kind of just doing everything for you when you're watching him at practice. Now, did have a really bad run block rep today where he basically flipped over someone and went straight to the ground. Wasn't the best, but he's still done really well throughout the course of this week. And to me, he's a player that I'm going to be looking at on day 3 to bring in as a potential starter. You know, he could end up being a starter in the NFL. I think he's that good. Now, do I think he's a guy you keep around past like rookie contract as a starter? I don't know. But I think if you're just looking for someone to kind of bridge the gap or to be a backup at a high level, I think this is the kind of player you find. So Georgia has a lot of really good receivers coming out this year. Kind of weird to say that because it's not really a college that's known for it. But even especially like if you consider A.D. Mitchell came from Georgia and just flipped over to Texas this last year, it'd get even crazier. So a lot of good players that are coming out of Georgia in some way or another. Then the final guy I'll talk about, Johnny Wilson, he has been really up and down for me. I see why some people love him and why some people hate him. Because there's plays where you're like, okay, he is 6'6", right? He's huge. He's like 230 pounds or something. And he shows the ability to be shifty on this play. And the next play, he looks clunky. And so I don't know what the heck this guy is. I think in my projection for him, I can't put him super high because I don't think he's going to be good consistently. But he's going to be someone that I think someone's going to take a chance on. I think someone's going to pick him somewhat early because of the upside there, because of the crazy size and how much the NFL loves that. But he's been very interesting to watch. He's a receiver unlike any other, and that's probably because he's really supposed to be a tight end. But he's been a fun one to watch during this week. As far as players, that's most of everyone. One last guy I want to throw out. I don't know if I... Here, let me see if I can find it. Let me do this. It is worth the watch if I do. Yep, here we go. We got a couple plays from him. So, I can't remember the name. Someone sent to me. Oh, Dwayne Carter. Okay. Duke defensive lineman here. I have no clue who this guy is. I didn't watch him at all before the Senior Bowl or anything. But this guy has made 2 incredible plays while I've been filming. I don't know what it is, but his bull rush is just insane. I want to show you what I mean here. Let's watch this play. He just kills the guy. Just flies right over him on the play. It's almost like the speed off the snap is so good, and he's got so much strength that the dude's not even ready. I mean, look at the offensive lineman. Look at his feet here. He's barely even stepped back. And he's just getting plowed. And kind of the same thing ended up happening today as well. This clip was from yesterday. And you got this one. Just keeps pushing. Ends up throwing him to the ground at the end of it. You just see he does not let guys anchor. And so this is a name that I'm going to be looking at, probably adding to my big board because of it. Because if you're doing that at the Senior Bowl, I don't care if I didn't know you before or not, you deserve to be on my draft board. So he is a guy who's very much impressed too. And I think has gotten a big look from the Jacksonville fan base as well. And hopefully the scouts and coaches too. So with that said, that's all I've got here. Those are all the players I've watched pretty closely. It's been a fun week down here, getting to meet a lot of people. I've had a really good time, and I recommend to you guys, like if you've got the money and the extra time to go do something like this, Senior Bowl is a really fun experience. You get to see a lot of NFL people there, and you basically get to live in draft world for an entire week. So it is worth it. But that's all I've got. I appreciate y'all watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And finally, go Jags.